Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel, and I gotta tell you, this one definitely surprised me. Here's the headline. Ex-Ripple CTO announces revival of CODIUS. Pundit identifies potential impact on XRP ledger. Now, back in 2017, when I jumped into crypto, CODIUS was widely discussed. And I'll get into more specifics as we get into the video, but just know this at the very outset that CODIUS is something that was being developed by Ripple, and it was a smart contracts platform, but it would offer true interoperability. So it would be great for the XRP ledger, which doesn't have smart contract functionality on layer 1, and it would also help, again, to, like I said a second ago, interoperate with any other blockchain out there and give, in theory, any blockchain smart contract functionality, even if it's not on the mainnet. And in theory, if that worked, it would make you kind of wonder, well, wait a minute, why do you even necessarily need to have smart contract functionality on a layer 1? And so there are all sorts of things that were discussed on this topic, and it did end up fizzling out, but now it's coming back, and it's so fascinating to me. There are a lot of approaches that developers are taking to bring smart contract functionality either directly to the XRP ledger or to build something that allows for interoperability, or to have something, even if it's just a layer 2, that's specifically just for the XRP ledger. All of these approaches are being tackled, and it just makes me confident that at some point in the future, the XRP ledger, it is going to have the benefits of other platforms like Ethereum, for example. It will have that smart contract functionality. It's just that this stuff has to be built out. And then I sit here thinking, with how incredible XRP is broadly for payments, real-time settlement, transactions that are so cheap they might as well be free, it's going to have that edge too. It's like, what more could you want? It just works, and it's been adopted. It has liquidity, which is something that you can't program into a blockchain. Either you've got staying power or you don't, and XRP already does. So to see this headline and know that CODIUS may be coming back, I found that very interesting. So I thought I'd share a little trip down memory lane here in part. I'll share with you the little bits we do know about specifically this, but I'm not sure many of you realize this, but if not for Ripple, Ethereum literally would not exist. And so there's a neat story from the former Ripple CTO. His name's Stefan Thomas. And I want to share with you some stuff that he had published in the past. But before going any further, I do want to be clear. I do not have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice, and you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. All right, so Stefan Thomas, as I said, of course, he was the chief technology officer at Ripple for a number of years. He did end up leaving, and David Schwartz ended up taking over that role. Before that, David Schwartz's official title was chief cryptographer. But Stefan Thomas left, and so that's the shift that was made. And the reason Stefan Thomas left is because he wanted to build a platform that basically gave a new way to monetize content on the internet. And it's interesting. And he worked on this for half a decade. Unfortunately, they did end up shutting the whole thing down. It was called Coil. But I'll not be surprised if this concept makes a return, whether it's from him or somebody else, because it is actually a good idea. It's just kind of a question of what's the right business model to make this thing work, in my estimation. Because right now, there are just really a couple of ways to monetize on the internet. You can put content behind a paywall, or you can have a free model. But of course, that means that you're the product then, because then you've got to look at a bunch of ugly advertisements all over websites, basically. But what if there were a third option to where you could actually stream money in real time, but only for the content you're looking at? So you could be streaming, it would be real small amounts of money, but fractions of a penny for X amount of time spent watching. It could be a YouTube video, or for how far down you scroll if you're reading a blog, how far you go down on that. It would just stream the money in real time, because the technology exists to make that a reality. And he built it, and it did work from a technological perspective. And so basically the way it worked is there's a monthly subscription fee, and I was a subscriber, actually. It was $5 a month. And then the trouble, of course, is how do you get every website on the planet, or as many as possible, to jump onto the platform, make the whole business model viable. And so ultimately they weren't able to get it to work, but the idea of having a third option for monetization that isn't a paywall and it's not advertisements, it's not that everybody would want that necessarily, but some people do. And so I just think it's still a brilliant idea, and I think somebody's probably going to get that to work in the future. Maybe it'll just look a little bit differently, but it's possible. And so one of the settlement mechanisms, by the way, you could actually settle to XRP. And so Ripple helped Coil, helped to fund him anyway. So I just thought I'd share a little bit of his background because this is a really brilliant guy. Like, he can make stuff work. Now, making a successful business is different than necessarily building interesting technology. I get that, but still, you need both, and he's certainly got the brilliant side of this whole thing now. So he was working on that, and then I just have various pages pulled up here. I'm not going to read all this, but in March of last year, there was the news that Coil was sunsetting, as they said here. But he's certainly not lost his passion to build things. That's for damn sure. And so if he's really reviving CODIUS, and he said that he is, and if it works, this is something that would be fantastic for XRP and the XRP ledger, even if it's not specifically for it. Now, I say that, admittedly, not having a ton of information of what this new iteration of CODIUS might look like, but if it's going to be anything like what it was designed to be in the past, this would be very good. So I wanted to share with you some of this piece that was written by Stefan Thomas from June 6th of 2018. And this is so cool. It's just one of those cool like time capsule pieces in my mind. And I actually had read this some number of years ago. So I remember when I came across it when I was preparing to record this video. And he's literally talking about how if not for what he and Ripple were doing, Ethereum literally wouldn't exist. So check this out, though, and it explains a little bit about what CODIUS was supposed to look like. So this is published by Stefan Thomas, June 6, 2018, titled CODIUS, Smart Contracts Made from Containers. Smart contracts have generated a lot of buzz, yet you've probably never encountered one in your day-to-day. It seems that no important real-world products use them. Why? You might say they're too new. But for those of us who have been in the blockchain space for a while, this argument isn't compelling. I was working on smart contracts in 2013, the same year Docker was released. But smart contracts are still relegated to experiments, while Docker and other projects inspired by it run everything, including this very website. My hypothesis for why smart contracts haven't entered the mainstream is that the architecture hasn't been flexible enough to deal with the complexity of real-world use cases. Ethereum is an excellent proof of concept, but it's difficult to integrate with other systems and even forks of Ethereum. And without robust integrations, it's impossible to build anything more than a proof of concept. Let's go back to the beginning to better understand where the current architecture comes from. Bitcoin was released as an integrated payment system that pioneered the blockchain concept, including a minimalistic scripting language for smart contracts. After Bitcoin, the technology got its first major upgrade in the form of XRP Ledger, which was the first blockchain to be built on a general-purpose key/value map, making it closer to a general-purpose database than just a payment system. I joined Ripple in 2012, and one of my first projects was to build a smart contract system for XRP Ledger. Now, folks, if you've been here for a while, you've probably heard of CODIUS, and maybe this is ringing a bell, but I'm willing to bet that there are a lot of new people that had no idea that Ripple, over a decade ago, like right out the gate, were building a smart contract system, and it's before anything like this existed. This would have been the first, right? So check this out. He continues. By April 2013, I had an architecture and a prototype. It was a sandboxed execution environment called Ripple VM, which used Google's native client to securely run contracts directly in Ripple D. Together with the generic key/value store provided by Ripple, this seemed like a promising approach at the time. And this is where it gets extra interesting. Check this out. He says, later in 2013, and mind you, Ethereum, it didn't launch until I think it was at some point in 2015. I can't remember exactly. Somebody can fact check me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was 2015. And so here we're talking about 2013. So it didn't exist. There was nothing like this on the planet, right? And Ripple was building it, Stefan Thomas specifically. So he writes, later in 2013, a young Bitcoin developer crashed on my couch for a couple of weeks while visiting San Francisco. In the afternoon, he would come to the Ripple office and join our discussions about smart contracts. His name was Vitalik Buterin. That's right, folks. I don't know. I'm sure that many of you listening know this, but I'm willing to bet that a bunch of people also don't realize that. If not for Ripple building this the first of its kind, attempting to do this, Vitalik Buterin never would have had the idea on his own to build Ethereum. He got it from Ripple. Ripple has had a way greater impact than they're given credit for in the entire crypto space. The space would not look the same, and it would look a lot worse if not for Ripple and all the things that Ripple inspired ultimately. And Ripple did inspire Ethereum. Absolutely, that's a matter-of-fact statement right there. So he basically, Vitalik Buterin, he took a lot of the ideas that Ripple had and then just built out his own thing with some other people and ended up launching years after the XRP ledger was created and years after Ripple started working on this. And so, anyway, Stefan Thomas then wrote, and these conversations led him to incorporate Ripple's key/value data structure into Ethereum. People often ask why we didn't release our prototype, preempting Ethereum and potentially attracting developers to XRP instead. At the time, we underestimated the amount of interest there would be in smart contracts. Moreover, building this architecture seemed daunting. Hats off to Vitalik and friends for attracting a community large enough and fervent enough to pull it off. CODIUS works differently than smart contracts in Bitcoin or Ethereum. However, there was another reason we didn't pursue this project. By the end of 2013, Evan Schwartz and I, another former Ripple employee, had come up with a new design for smart contracts. This became the CODIUS project, with a white paper released in 2014. CODIUS works differently than smart contracts in Bitcoin or Ethereum. The contracts run on independent hosts without an underlying blockchain, similar to traditional hosting. This allows them to interact with any service or API, scale infinitely, and read from or write to any blockchain. The key challenge of smart contracts and interoperability was solved. So folks, think about that. If that's something that you could get to work, any perceived benefit that a blockchain has, like Ethereum on layer 1 having to do with smart contracts, is eliminated if this works. Eliminated. Because if it's adopted, it's ifs, and yet you'd have to actually will this into existence and have it adopted. But if that would work, then you're talk about a new baseline. My God, you wouldn't if it were adopted. Again, it's an if. If it were, you wouldn't need you genuinely wouldn't need smart contract functionality on a layer 1. Now, I'm not saying that there would never be potentially. So I'm not saying that it would on Rolex. That's why I said if like 5 times, just to be clear. But maybe there are instances where it would be preferential to have something set up like that. But maybe there would be some unique use cases where it would still make sense to have it on a layer 1. But you can see the implications if this were to be successful and broadly adopted, right? It's like, why would you use something that's slow and clunky and bogged down as a result of what's coded on layer 1 in terms of smart contracts if you don't absolutely have to? So it's just fascinating. But so he wrote here, though, there's only one problem. Running contracts costs money, and we didn't have a neutral way to pay CODIUS. Exactly. So the fact that there's a native coin on Ethereum, ETH, well, that's why it's there, broadly speaking. It's there to pay for those transactions, and you need something on a blockchain to make that happen. But if you have a system in place where there are smart contracts, but smart contracts cost money, how do you make that work? And so I'm not going to read the rest of the article, but they were thinking the solution would ultimately be Interledger Protocol, which I won't get into. It's not a blockchain itself. It's literally a protocol, and it would provide for payments interoperability between not just blockchains, but also legacy finance. So anything that's a ledger, it would connect it. And the code itself is fairly simplistic. And so that's the route that they were going. Ultimately, CODIUS was shelved, and I'm not real clear on what the reasons are there. Maybe if somebody has a link to a story that explains that. I don't recall off the top of my head anyway. But this is coming back. So take a look at this. Oh, but actually, you know what? Let me mention this too. I'm going to be brief on this, but just to remind you guys, in September, here's the headline: Schwartz clarifies Ripple position on XRP Ledger smart contracts via EVM sidechain amid concerns. So on top of this news from today about CODIUS getting revived, apparently, on top of that, just as a reminder, we found out at the beginning of September that even Ripple now supports smart contract functionality on layer 1 for the XRP Ledger. So this whole lack of smart contract functionality on the XRP Ledger, it's getting tackled from a whole number of different ways. So going for functionality on layer 1, whether that is the hooks amendment, if that's ever, or some form of that adopted on the XRP ledger, also by having sidechains here, and now the news today, CODIUS coming back. So there's a lot of ways, and that's why it gives me optimism that at some point this is going to be figured out, and the playing field is going to be a lot more level, and XRP is still going to have its incredible functionality for payments, making it that much more attractive, right? And so here we have XRP CTO announces revival of CODIUS, pundit identifies potential impact on XRP ledger. Now, they shared perspective from a crypto pundit named Max Avery, and I want to share with you some of what he had to say here. A big chunk of his thread here had to do with the history, and since I kind of ran through that, I'm not going to bother reading through that portion of it. But look, again, to me, it just seems like this is the thing where if it works, and if it's broadly adopted, it just levels the playing field for any blockchain that doesn't have layer 1 smart contract functionality, which would be freaking cool as hell so far as I'm concerned. It'll be yet another thing that will help to ensure the long-term viability of XRP and the XRP ledger. And so here's what Max Avery had to say. And admittedly, like, we don't have a ton of information. We basically just know he's going to build this, but based on what we know about CODIUS from the past, we can come to some reasonable speculation about why this would be a really big deal, right? And so here's what he wrote, Max Avery wrote. Stefan Thomas, former Ripple CTO, announced he's working on a new version of CODIUS. This is huge for the XRP ledger ecosystem. Here's why it's a big deal. CODIUS is an open source hosting platform for smart contracts. It aims to revolutionize decentralized app development by providing a more flexible and scalable approach compared to traditional blockchain platforms. Cool stuff about CODIUS. Decentralized hosting. Run programs on multiple hosts, creating a peer-to-peer network for services. Built-in billing. Programs can pay for their own operation. Language flexibility. Write smart contracts in popular languages like Java or C++. Why is this significant for the XRP ledger? Off-chain, it just scrolled. There we go. Off-chain smart contract execution. CODIUS can process contracts off-ledger, reducing load on the XRP ledger and maintaining high transaction speeds. Cross-ledger compatibility. Interact with multiple blockchains simultaneously. Yeah, exactly, folks. That's exactly what I was getting at several minutes or so ago when I was talking about that. That's why this is a big deal. You don't have to give up any of the functionality that XRP ledger has on mainnet to achieve this, which is why it's appealing, of course. And then he wrote, CODIUS's blockchain, and it scrolled again. I do not like the way that X is programmed. You click on a different post, post in a thread, and then the screen just jumps somewhere else, wherever the hell it feels like. It's dumb as hell. It didn't used to do that. I don't know when it started doing that. I hope it's fixed. Anyway, Max wrote, CODIUS's blockchain agnostic approach enhances versatility, enabling complex decentralized applications and cross-chain operations. Flexible smart contracts, more complex apps can interact with the XRP ledger without slowing it down, and scalable application layer distribute computational load. And then he kind of gets into the history, which again, I don't want to run through. I shared with you the stuff that I thought was most interesting already in the video. But this is cool. And so that's why, like, for me, the key takeaway, just in my humble opinion, is that there's going to be, in one form or another, serious and usable smart contract functionality for XRP, for the XRP ledger, which is going to be great for XRP, of course. So whether it's layer 1 or a sidechain or this, if it's CODIUS, in whatever form or forms it comes, it's going to come. And when it levels the playing field like that, then you just sit back and you're like, wow, so XRP, having been built specifically for payments, it's just going to smoke the competition. I mean, and look, I'm not a maximalist of any coin, XRP or otherwise, but what I really am thinking is that, like, and I've already had this confidence, but it's just more reason that XRP truly will have long-term viability. I just think it's the coolest damn thing. So, no layer 1 is going to be everything to everyone, but if stuff like this works, that's off-chain, again, just leveling the playing field, it may not matter. It may just not matter that much. And XRP has been around long enough, it's got that staying power. It's just the coolest damn thing. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say, all right? That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo.